Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So this is going to be my Walking Dead episode 14 video. Only 2 episodes left. I would say, I've never been more excited to see a character die after the end of this episode than I am right now. I am so happy to see a very certain character die. Of course, you know what that means. That means that he's probably going to live longer than anyone else. Whenever characters get too sympathetic, that's when they kill him. If any of you guys were live tweeting with me on Twitter, you saw I actually some of the really big WTF moments I had GIFs of right after they happened, but because they're so spoilery, I couldn't post any of them. They're just burning a hole in my hard drive right now. With that in mind, let's just get to it. Just careful for spoilers from the episode if you haven't seen it yet. There are so many WTF deaths that we have to talk about, starting with top 5 WTF moments. Number 5, Glenn, Aiden, in the EDM truck. Did anyone else think that the music playing was a little on the nose? I love that Eugene was able to use it later in the episode to distract the walkers, but still, why would you play really loud music while you were driving around in the apocalypse, unless you were doing what Eugene did in trying to attract walkers? As the audience, we've spent all of our time with the survivors, so we know how bad it is. So the people at Alexandria seem really dumb. But I guess if you'd been living at Alexandria this whole time, you wouldn't be thinking like the survivors. Aiden totally thought he was hardcore. Glenn pulled the rug out from under him, and even though it seemed like they were on good terms whenever they went on that mission, it still wasn't enough to keep Aiden from just charging headfirst into getting them all blown up. I'll be interested to see if the truck or the EDM gets used as a weapon in the finale. On to number 4, Carol and Sam Cookies round 2. It started out really funny and then just went to shit by the end of their scenes. I felt so bad for Sam by the end. You could definitely tell, towards the end of their conversation, the direction that it was going. There aren't any visible bruises on Sam, but that doesn't mean that Pete's not abusing him too. And all of a sudden, you see the wheels turn in Carol's head and she knows exactly what has to happen. If you've read the comic books, this is straight out of the comics, this sequence of events. I mean, the way they're doing it is different because Carol wasn't around at this time. She'd already died by the time they got to Alexandria in the comics. It makes sense that they would tie her story to this abuse story, just because she was abused by Ed. And also, if you remember when Carol and Daryl went into Atlanta, they took that book, the abuse book. But Carol said that she and her child stayed in that building when they were away from Ed. He'd been abusing her, so she needed to get away. On to number 3, shit goes down in the warehouse. There were so many great death scenes in this episode, mostly associated with their warehouse storyline. First, we have Aiden just getting his guts shredded. That was another GIF that I couldn't post. I was like, this is so good, I can't post it, too spoilery. He manned up at the end. It was kind of hard to tell the confession that he was making to Glenn. I think he was confessing to leaving the friend behind that Walker had killed, the one they strung up. And his friend too, you could just tell later in the episode, whenever they were in that sticky situation in the revolving door, yeah, he's definitely going to bail on them too. It's like all these people at Alexandria are total cowards. I wasn't super attached to the Noah character, but I did really like his death scene. Just seeing the horror on Glenn's face, he started to get a little sympathetic, so you knew Noah's days were marked. And that thing he wrote in the journal, this is the beginning. During Talking Dead, Tyler James Williams said that had a double meaning. One, it implied everything that Noah was looking forward to. This is the beginning of a new life here. But after his death, it turned into this really dark thing. This is the beginning of the shit hitting the fan. So the 2 different storylines, you had the stuff that was going on inside Alexandria and the stuff on this warehouse run. I feel like the warehouse stuff was just way more poetic. Although we'll see when we get to the Pete, Carol, Rick stuff. That's an interesting thought, most poetic death of the season. It was totally infuriating, just all this incompetence, but it was really cool to see Eugene man up finally. I knew that was going to happen, I didn't know when. The minute he and Tara had that conversation, "Are you really such a coward? I told you I'm a coward." And Tara gets put in a situation where she needs to be rescued. Obviously, Eugene was going to man up and rescue her. Turns out all he needed was just a truck full of EDM courage. Here's a good question for you guys. If Glenn hadn't come along and knocked, Aiden's friend out, do you think that Eugene would have been able to overpower him? I felt like his friend, they probably would have gotten away with the truck, but Eugene still would have stayed. This episode was definitely a big win for Eugene. He is a coward, but he's just slightly less of a coward after this episode. Especially Mother Dick Abraham. He kind of had a Eugene moment too, only he's obviously very much not a coward. He's like, hell no, I ain't leaving anybody. On to number 2. Carol tells Rick that he's going to have to kill Pete. It can go down no other way. As much as I'm happy as they're doing so much comic book stuff, I would really like to see Carol be the one to kill Pete. Just slit his throat and then stuff a cookie in his mouth. As of right now, we don't know a whole lot about Pete. All we know is that he's a doctor and he's a huge porch dick. Because there's only 2 episodes left, I feel like we're going to fast forward through his storyline. I feel like we're not going to take a deep dive into Pete anytime soon, unless it's at the end of a knife. It's always interesting to see the way shows tackle ideas like abuse, spousal abuse, child abuse. The Walking Dead very clearly taking the grim approach. It's like the easiest way to get killed on the show is to, one, either be super hopeful and to like express your hopes and dreams, or two, be a child abuser, or, side option three, be a horse. And finally, my number one WTF moment, probably the biggest WTF we've had in a while, Gabriel rats out the group to Deanna. As many opportunities as the show gives you to get upset about something, like really upset, I was physically upset in the middle of Gabriel's confession. I've never been so excited to see someone die. I don't know that he's gonna die. I'd be really upset if he makes it to season 6. And sometimes the porch dicks and the cowards are the ones that survive the longest. That being said, I don't think the show is going to troll us too much. Regardless of when he dies, I do think that it's going to be an epic payoff. Like, it'll be so rewarding for the audience. You'll just see Twitter explode in joy. I did see some of you guys joking on Twitter that there's no way that staircase would not be creaking with Maggie, like, listening in on the conversation. They didn't include any clips from next week's episode of the group discussing what Gabriel said, but at some point Maggie's going to have to rush off to tell Rick, like, look, Gabriel just ratted us out. Things are going to be really bad. And they don't know anything about the people that died on the warehouse run. I did really like Deanna's reaction. She's like, whoa, okay, clearly you are super crazy. They told us that they did terrible things, so I get it. We're in the apocalypse. You have to be terrible to survive. Gabriel's rant was just so good. I would say that's probably my favorite Gabriel moment. It's a bad moment, but it's really fun to watch him go off the rails like that. It's so funny to watch him on this show and then watch him on The Wire. Like, his character on The Wire is just so much more badass. That's a really good jumping off point. So here's my big question for you guys. How do you want Gabriel to die? And do you think that he's going to die in the finale? Or do you think that he's going to slink his way into season 6? I guess I'm really hoping that someone impales him with a cross. Or like a church spire falls off the roof and impales him. Something with a lot of Bible imagery. A very biblical death. I feel like that would be appropriate for Gabriel. Just in terms of comic book territory, for those of you guys that are reading along, we're still in Life Among Them territory. It's this Rick-Pete conflict that serves as the impetus that throws us into like the next big arc. They do have synopsis for the last 2 episodes out, or at least next week's episode. Daryl finds something when he's out abroad, and I think it's going to have something to do with the wolves. Like I've said in previous videos, I think that they're like a stand-in for the scavengers from the comics. They're like the next villainous group the survivors run into before they get to Hilltop, before Hilltop appears in the comics. I know everyone really wants to see Negan, but I do feel like they're going to save him for season 6. Hopefully 100th episode is when we'll see a teaser. It's almost time to start making final predictions about, like who's going to survive to season 6, what's going to go down in the finale. Clearly, it's very self-contained right now. It's going to be this internal battle, this civil war inside the safe zone. I wouldn't be surprised if Rick versus Pete or, Carol versus Pete happens at the very end of next week's episode, leaving the finale for like this grand explosion and this other, group of villains to come in. It'd be a good way to lead into season 6. One conflict is over, but a new group of villains comes in and you have to deal with them in the season premiere next year. Don't forget too, this fall, they're actually, at the end of the summer, they're airing the first 6 episodes, or the only 6 episodes of season 1 of the spinoff. So we're actually getting like 6 extra weeks of Walking Dead before season 6 premieres. Robert Kirkman actually dropped a bunch of details about the spinoff. So here's what's going on. The show isn't a prequel, technically, to the main show. It will start a little bit before like the timeline where we are right now in the main show, but it will slowly catch up and run concurrently. So what's happening on the spinoff will happen at the same time that stuff is happening on the main show, but they're going to be completely separate. They're not going to be any crossovers. It won't have anything to do with the comics. So anytime you see a character with like a similar name to someone else, it'll be completely coincidental. They're probably going to screen the pilot episode at Comic-Con. Walking Dead always brings a lot of footage to Comic-Con. I mean, that's why. Robert Kirkman's always good about that. So don't forget, new round of the giveaway starts now. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. I'm probably going to do a double giveaway whenever we get to the finale video too. I'll start doing spin-off videos as we start to learn new stuff, but there's still a lot we don't know about it yet. While you guys wait for the Q&A tomorrow, you can click here to catch up on all my Walking Dead videos, and you can click here for my latest Game of Thrones Season 5 video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Now let's all do the thing.